Well, hello there. Welcome to Visit Old Cape Cod with Steve. I'm Steve, and I'd like to thank you for stopping by to come along with us to visit a nice old home in the Sandwich, Massachusetts area that's known as a three-quarter style Cape home. So sit back and relax, and I hope you'll enjoy this little tour while visiting Old Cape Cod with Steve. Well, let's take a brief moment before we enter our little house and just to take a little peek at the town of Sandwich as it may have appeared back in 1880. Of course, there was a church, several churches in the town of Sandwich, and the horse and wagon, a nice person going to or from by horse-drawn wagon, of course, and the little house is a three-quarter Cape, and we'll just enter through the little gate and in the front door, and we'll see what beholds. Well, come on in and have a seat here in the keeping room, one of the chairs by the fire, and enjoy the warmth and coziness of an 1880s keeping room here. There's a nice braided rug on the floor that took some time to make. We have the big wooden pine table that served as a meal table and food prep. Mother, of course, had to make bread, and she did all her work right there. And there was a rocking chair that she'd set in at night to do the needlework. Because, of course, they worked from sunup till well after dark, and everything had its place and everything had its useful purpose. There's a little couple of candles there on the table. Of course, they'd probably moved on to kerosene lamp by now, but candles were still prevalent in the area. This is the room that they had set in when someone come to call. They'd sit around the fire and have something to drink. Could be mulled cider in the fall and winter time. It could be coffee or whatever they felt was appropriate for the time. They'd discuss politics and just everything that had to do with life in general back in the 1880s. Their business deals were talked over, and of course the children would do their homework over there on the table. And it was just, in general, a nice big full room where almost all the activities took place. Okay, we travel on through the family room here, and we come to the kitchen. Probably by the 1880s or so, they'd put in a cast iron stove, a cook stove back here for Mother to cook on there, and made her life, 100% easier. And you'd probably, there'd be all the amenities that you'd find in any pantry, the flour and the sugar and the bread box and, everything that they needed to use in the kitchen, pots and pans, and over on the outside wall, probably there was a dry sink with a pitcher and a wash bowl and buckets with water that had to be drug in from the well. Although back in here on Cape Cod, we have a pretty good situation. That water table, you drive a pipe down about 20 feet and you hit water, no problem. Most any place on Cape Cod, it was a pretty easy task to do that, and then just run a pipe into under the house and have a pump right there in the kitchen. Oh my God, they didn't know what to do when that happened. They had a pump right in the kitchen. There, people come from miles around just to see it. Indoor water in the kitchen, unheard of, but it was one of the niceties that you could put in if you could had the money and the resources to do it. That was probably one of the things they would have is a little pump, pitcher pump there, just inside in the kitchen, getting water instead of having to lug it from the well. And most people did have an outdoor well, hand dug well down, so they could get water for the livestock and for their gardens and uh, just general outside water use. But as soon as they could, they got that indoor pitcher pump inside, so that worked during the winter and year round. So you didn't have to go out and in the middle of the winter try to get a bucket of water that was probably frozen to death out there. So I know that's a fact too, because I actually lived as a youngster. We had wasn't our sole source of water, but we actually had a pitcher pump that came from a small well just outside the kitchen. And back in the day, that's what it was. It was a little pitcher pump right there in the kitchen, a little pantry-way, and had a pump right there, so you could get nice cold spring water out of it there when you wanted to. So that was one of the things that you would see, and it would be a real modern convenience for Mom back in the day. Well, then they had their pride and joy was their parlor. Jesus, their kids, and oh boy, they didn't dare. They were told, don't you dare go in the parlor, ever. They weren't allowed in there for any reason, unless it was a special occasion there. They had all their fine things in there. They had probably a horse-head stuffed couch there, I see. And it looks like a piano. My goodness sakes, these people must have a pretty good job, I guess, a line of work. There's a lot of stuff there that most people wouldn't have. They wouldn't have a piano like that, and maybe the little fireplace deflector there. That was just a modern convenience for the day. And of course they had their Bible. They always had that there. They'd have maybe on Sundays people would come over and they'd sit in the parlor there, and they'd probably read a good book and have a nice conversations, and life went on. On the wall there's their clock up there that told them what time it was. Other than that, the only thing they knew was when the sun came up and when the sun went down. And it was, you could tell when it was noontime because you got hungry, I guess. So, and that looks like some kind of a print rug carpet there on the floor. Gee whiz, like I say, these people must have, and they're not suffering from hard times, that's for sure. That's a nice looking little parlor there for the day. Well, next is the main master bedroom here. This is Mom and Pop's bedroom here, and it looks like they're doing okay again. They got the nice braided rug on the floor there. That's a nicety, and a couple of chairs and a big old chest. That's probably a cedar chest. And Mom probably's got her wedding dress in there, and some heirloom quilts maybe, and extra blankets for those cold nights, in the wintertime. And over there, I see a little plant in the window. That's probably a herb plant. They'd always have something like that as a decoration and as a useful amenity in the house that they could use in cooking and what have you. And probably gave off a nice scent. And I see up on the highboy there's a kerosene lamp. Another one over here on a little bed table by the bed. There's another kerosene burner. So they were well lit up in there, and those little kerosene lights, of course, they give off. Not only do they give off light, but they give off a lot of heat, and nice and warm from those little guys. And in fact, those two lamps would probably heat that room if it wasn't all that cold outside. And of course, it's a nice picture up overhead, and it looks like a really nice, comfortable sleeping quarters for the family members there. Well, now we got to climb this little ladder here, and we'll find ourselves in the upstairs bedroom, where children would normally sleep. And of course, there wasn't a lot of insulation up here, and it got very warm in the summer and very cold in the winter, of course. So if you had one or two or three, maybe four or more children, they all piled into one bed to keep each other warm, piled on some nice homemade quilts, and probably a wool blanket too. And they stayed nice and warm, for the winter nights when it was really cold out. And in the summertime, well, I suspect they probably slept with very little on, and if that window would open, why, of course, they'd have that little breeze to help a little bit there. But that was living quarters for the children, and they apparently made out okay, because I don't think a lot of them froze to death out there in the winter. Come out back here now, and we'll visit with the lady of the house as she does her wash. She's washing there in a wash tub, and she's probably got a washboard. You've seen them. And she rubbed the clothes up and down on that, and she's probably using some lye soap. And boy, that's powerful stuff. Her hands were as red as lobsters when she got done with that. I made lye soap and used it, and boy, it gets you clean one way or the other. And there's her wash out of the line, clothesline. They don't see many of those anymore. Well, she didn't have a dryer, so that was her dryer right there. And the woodshed, see, there's some little wood there that goes in the house there to feed the stove and the fireplace if need be. And the chickens, those are normally considered the woman of the house as chickens. She was in charge of the chickens, and the children helped collect the eggs, and she'd feed the chickens. And mother usually, she'd sell the eggs off, and she had a little cookie jar or teapot or something that she'd keep her egg money in, and that was for emergencies or something special the household needed or whatever. They'd have a few extra pennies or dollars in that little jar to help with finances. And of course, there's that nice wooden heavy table there that I bet you some of them chickens had an encounter with at one point or another. It looks like a heck of a good processing table there. They probably grabbed up one of them old hens there and invited her in for supper. And we'll move on and see what else we can find on out in the backyard here at this lovely little Cape house. Well, there's another look at the backyard here. And of course, the ever-present and prominent little outhouse there. Everybody had one, of course. And some of them were just a single holer. Some was actually a two-holer. So that there were two children they could occupy at the same time. The time was pressed in trying to go to school or something. They could get in there. There'd be two holes to use. And of course, after milking, and if the horse wasn't being used for anything, they'd stick them in that out back pasture so they could graze. Of course, the cow, she needed all the grass she could get to make good milk. And usually down back there somewhere you'd find a little pond, a little water hole, maybe a spring or something. And most of these old houses on Cape Cod, they're sitting right out on the road, and they're pretty close together in some areas. But they had a big backyard usually, maybe 10 acres, because they had, they had to have a place for their barn and the outhouses there, and of course they had to have a pasture and a woodlot. Everybody had to have a woodlot, to have wood for the house. So, the acres, what you see from the street, usually is quite a bit was back in the day, quite a good sized piece of land. And that's about completes our tour here of this little house. I certainly hope you enjoyed the little trip and the visit, and you'll come back and visit with us again soon. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm Steve, and I hope you enjoyed our visit to an 1880s three-quarter Cape style home. I hope you'll hit that like button and subscribe, and you'll be notified when I make the next video of Visit Old Cape Cod with Steve.